Just to make the members aware in the chamber that we need 6 at all times. I know we can be moving around, but just we need 6 at all times for a quorum, just to make you aware.
No, we need 4.
No, we need 6 in the chamber.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thanks again to the members for, I suppose, for your patience, and those of you on Zoom as well. The new link has gone out and we're ready to go, and we'll go straight into the agenda, and we hope to finish it as soon as possible. Number 1 on the agenda, Councillor Healy and Councillor Bree.
Yes, we put forward this proposal after talking to the Thomas Howley Committee. As you're aware, there is a plethora going to take place in Enniscrone as well, and we would like this to be included in it. As I said, we've talked to a lot of people out there, and we think that it's only right that people have an opportunity now to have a vote on it, and that they can have their say in it too. Thank you.
Councillor Bree.
I'm seconding this joint motion, and then Councillor Healy's in my name. Since its foundation, the Fine Gael party has harboured members who were pro-British or West Brits. They become very upset and uncomfortable when people decide to honour or pay tribute to those Irish patriots who took on the might of the British Empire. 2 months ago, when this council considered naming the bridge over the Bellawadi River in Enniscrone the Thomas Howley Bridge to honour the memory of the young Enniscrone man who gave his life in the struggle for Irish independence, not only did the Fine Gael councillors and their independent fellow travellers vote down the motion to honour Volunteer Howley, they actually managed to persuade a number of Fianna Fáil councillors to join with them in voting against the motion. And I remember a time when Fianna Fáil described itself as the Republican Party. Is it any wonder that Fianna Fáil are losing all credibility when they can reject their own heritage and history and essentially act as a mudguard for Fine Gael? On the day the matter was debated here, reference was made to upsetting tourists, and one particular spurious excuse put forward in opposition to the naming of the bridge was that the people of Enniscrone were against the naming the bridge in honour of Volunteer Howley. That can only be described as a gross insult to the majority of the decent people of Enniscrone, who, like Irish people everywhere, are proud to pay tribute and honour those who gave their lives in the struggle for national independence. As a youth, when the British Army, the Black and Tans and the RIC had imposed a reign of terror throughout the length and breadth of the country, Thomas Howley had the courage to pledge his allegiance to Dáil Éireann and the Irish Republic. He and other brave and courageous young men and women from Enniscrone and West Sligo, despite their shortage of weapons, had no hesitation in taking on the might of the British Empire. Unfortunately, Volunteer Howley was shot by Crown forces, and history records that the people of Enniscrone in multitudes attended his funeral to honour and pay tribute to his memory. I believe that the spurious and phony excuses alleging that the people of Enniscrone are against the naming of the bridge in honour of Thomas Howley now needs to be exposed. And the simplest method and the most democratic method is to hold a plebiscite. And the outcome of the plebiscite will prove beyond doubt that the great majority of people in Enniscrone support the proposal to name the bridge in honour of Volunteer Thomas Howley. Formally second the motion.
I'm going to ask Mr. Moran to come in here just in light of the response.
I have circulated a report from the Scothirlock and basically setting out the provisions, legislation in relation to changing a place name. I suppose the bottom line is the department have said to us that there are issues with the legislation at the minute, and until such time as new regulations are introduced, there is no basis at present to undertake a plebiscite to change a place name. Thanks, Carol.
So can we move the motion?
No, we can take the motion. As John says himself, it's with the government at the moment to change it. And once they change it, sure, it'll be no different. This can still go ahead with it.
Okay, Councillor.
I would agree. The Minister of State, Frank Feehan, actually spoke on this matter in the Dáil, because we were talking about, I suppose, the original proposal for the plebiscite for the issue of the naming of Enniscrone, the proper name. And the Minister said that there needs to be some amendments to regulations, but I assume that will be happening sooner rather than later. And I suppose what we're saying here is that if there is a plebiscite in relation to the name, we can have two questions on the ballot paper, one in relation to the naming of Enniscrone and the other one in relation to the naming of the bridge. and there's no extra cost involved.
Councillor Queenan.
Made my position clear all along as somebody who lives in Enniscrone, works in Enniscrone, from Enniscrone, and proud in Enniscrone, and proud Republican. We've displayed this on 2 occasions. The council made a decision here. The Place Names Committee recommendation came in here, and we voted it down. I want to see Thomas Howley honoured and every other patron from Enniscrone. And we're unfortunate this will probably happen in other villages also in the months and years ahead. And as Councillor O'Grady and Councillor McSharry suggested at the time that we should, why wasn't this discussed at our area meeting? So at the end of the debate the last day, I suggested that we were going to bring this back to the area meeting for a discussion on how we're going to work all of these issues. That in mind, I spoke to Mr. Donald Tenney, who's on holidays at the moment. I also spoke to Martin Connolly, Chairman of Tubbercurry, and has agreed, before this agenda was brought out, that we'll discuss it at the next Tubbercurry meeting to put in place some kind of a format to deal with all of these issues. And that's going ahead anyway. Now, regarding the plebiscite, the Enniscrone Plebiscite Committee had numerous meetings with ministers, with the committee, and regards the word of Enniscrone. And we can't impose something on top of them. That's number one. Number two, this committee, this council, has turned down Councillor Healy and Councillor Bree's proposals. And I don't see, and we also, how can you come in and discuss this issue? I thought you were going to discuss this issue for 6 months later. There's a whole lot of issues here. This is a motion that's legal at all, in my opinion. Honouring Thomas Healy, or Thomas Howley. Yes, he will be honoured by the people of Enniscrone, by the people of Enniscrone, by the committees of Enniscrone. But I'd be opposed to going down this route anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Councillor Clark.
I think that we'll be putting the council on bad ground and second guessing the decision that was made at the last monthly meeting. And the decision is made at every council meeting. Legally can't come back.
We're finding it difficult to hear you, Councillor Clark. Maybe if you mute your camera, knock off your camera, it might help.
Connor would have to be included in the plebiscite for the name of the bridge because it's the border between the two parishes. And again,
Councillor Clark, maybe mute your camera. There's some here want you to mute the microphone, but
you hear me now?
now go on now. Yes.
Because look, what I'm trying to say is the electorate of Castleconnor would have to be included in any plebiscite. The border of the two parishes, based on maybe the councillors does that. Also, we had this morning the property tax debate. Where is the 50,000 going to come out to? On very shaky grounds and illegal grounds in my view. And I just don't know where this is coming from.
I think we got the gist of what he was saying. He thinks that it's leaving the council on dodgy ground. Well, I'm only saying the gist of what he's saying. And that the electorate of Castleconnor would have to be brought into it as well for a plebiscite.
I don't agree.
Okay, Councillor Gibbons, I'm going to let you in, and does this
I just want to finish. The subcommittee came in with a report here. We turned it down. So the next time a subcommittee comes in with a report, and we don't have something going to happen, I would want to go for everything.
okay? Right?
The last motion before it, the last time this was discussed, there was a recommendation from the Place Names Committee, and the council decided to reject that. And the main argument that was used to whip people into voting against it, we were told that the people of Inniscrone were opposed to the bridge being called after volunteer Thomas Howley. That was the excuse, the spurious excuse that was offered. Now, I know in my heart and soul, and from speaking to people from Inniscrone, that they're not opposed to the bridge being named after Thomas Howley. So given, and in fairness, look, I'd be reluctant to put a motion like this forward or support a motion like this if it was just a plebiscite on this particular issue. But the fact that there is going to be a plebiscite in relation to the naming of Inniscrone, there is no extra cost involved whatsoever for us. And it will prove beyond a shred of doubt that the great majority of people of Inniscrone are in favour of it. Now, why would any councillor oppose this motion? It's just incredible that any councillor would oppose a motion that allows the citizens of a community to make a decision.
Councillor Mulvey, I'm going to let you in. You have your hand up, and I think there's divided opinion. So we are going to vote after you, Councillor Mulvey.
Yeah, well, look, thanks, Cahirla, but just for clarity, as the chair of the Place Names Committee, and I know this was stated at the last meeting as well, I think the full consensus with all the councillors is there's no issue with honouring Volunteer Howley. I certainly would be delighted to honour Volunteer Howley. But for clarity, and I stated this at the last meeting, the Place Names Committee proposed by Councillor Bray and seconded by Councillor Boyle that the item be brought back to the main meeting for discussion. And that's what we done at the main meeting. So I think just for clarity on that, that's what happened at the Place Names Committee, because there were councillors on the Place Names Committee who had raised not objections, but had just raised concerns on behalf of the collective community of West Sligo. So I think that's the clarity. And I also understood that if a motion was brought in and was put through, that it was 6 months before a repeat motion of the same wording could be brought in. So I just like clarity on that as well. But that's, as the chair of the Place Names Committee, that is the clarity that at that meeting, and I know there are other councillors, Councillor Clark, Councillor Flops, Councillor Malani, Councillor Brigg, Councillor Boyle were on that meeting, and it was proposed by Councillor Bray and seconded by Councillor Boyle that the issue be brought back for further consultation at the main meeting, and that is what happened.
Councillor Healy.
Yeah, just to clarify some issue here. That motion was put down in 2019. That went then from that onto the Place Names Committee. We had no say when the Place Names Committee was having that, when they were taking that. So this motion that you're talking about was in 2019. So we're well inside the 6 months.
Okay. Look. Okay, hold on, Councillor.
So it says all we're asking for. If Councillor Queen was so sure, let the people have their say. Let the people vote. Let them have their say today. That's what we're asking for. At the end of the day, the Thomas Howley Committee is from Inniscrone and surrounding areas, and we're asking them to have their say. And if it's a case, like Councillor Clark says, they want to bring in Castleconnor, I can't see a problem with it.
Councillor Gibbons, and then we're taking the vote.
Right. Two issues that I want to bring up. One is the Place Names Committee was put together a number of years ago by concerned councillors on this council, and they were given a job that was to make decisions on, is to make recommendations which was to be brought back to this council. That was something that was done, and it was brought back. All the excuses of the day can be given. And the other thing that I want to make, and I'm not going to throw out allegations, I'm not going to stand up here and make any big fuss or whatever else, but the one thing that I do want to make clear, the amount of phone calls that I had from people within that area. Ocean FM even got them commenting under the whole thing on the radio. They did not want to be associated, as they says themselves, they had no problem. They did not want to be associated with the decision that was taken by this council not to name the bridge after them. And this is why it is so important for a pacifist. The argument that was used here was that people, the residents of Inniscrone, were the ones that was totally against the naming of the bridge. And that was hearsay. The amount of people that contacted me, and I'm sure Councillor Bray and O'Boyle and whatever in relation to this says otherwise. This is one way to put this debate. And reality to it, we have a precipice going on there. There is nothing stopping this being added to the precipice.
All right, thanks,
Okay,
Councillor
thank you
Gibbons. Okay, Kevin, I'm going to ask you to call the roll.
Just, Cahill, can I ask you before, at the last meeting where this was discussed, was there a proposal that it would be brought to the area meeting? And then the outcome of that area meeting will come back here. Could I have that confirmed definitely? Is that correct?
Okay, I will.
Right?
Was be, but I didn't. The majority, there's a community out there, a split over.
Yeah, no, but was there a proposal? Okay, no.
Yes, it should be brought back to the area for discussion.
No,
It didn't go back.
yeah.
Okay,
Right,
well-
that's,
It's a book over. I spoke to the chairman to bring it and discuss it here.
We had a good discussion on this before, and I know it's important, and that's why I allowed it to be fully discussed again this morning, but I'm going to ask Kevin to call the roll on the motion.
It can still be discussed by the area committee, by anyone, whatever. But the point is, this isn't making a decision. All we're asking is that to be a plebiscite, to allow the people of Innisfrone decide themselves what they would like. It's up to this council at the end of the day to consider that plebiscite, the results of that plebiscite, and make a decision on it. It still comes down to the 18 members of the council to make the final decision. All we're saying is give the people of Innisfrone the opportunity to show that they support the naming of the bridge after Volunteer Howley. And then there will be no excuses. The council will clearly have to abide by the wishes of the people of Innisfrone.
Okay, so
Somebody leaving it for, and they're being the motion over that period of time. No, I think now is time for cool heads. We in the local area, we're going to discuss it, come back with a recommendation at a later stage. Don't want to head ideas and try and force another vote here today and try and force a plebiscite is not the way to deal with this issue.
we're going to take the vote. We're going to
It's not legal anyway.
We're going to take the vote on the
would have to elect the
the
members.
motion that's before us. Kevin, I'm going to please ask you
Not
to
to support this motion,
call
please.
Councillor Baker,
Far.
Councillor Bray, Councillor Casserly,
Against.
Councillor Clark. No.
Against.
Right. Councillor Connolly,
Against.
Councillor Fox,
Against?
Councillor Gibbons, Councillor Gilroy. Against. Councillor Healy, Councillor McSherry, not in attendance. Councillor Maguire, not there, okay. Councillor Malani. It's not there, okay. Councillor Mulvey.
Councillor Mulvey, you on mute? Councillor Milani?
Against.
That's Councillor Malani, is it?
Councillor
Sorry, against.
Sorry. Malani was against and Mulvey was against, is it? Okay. Councillor O'Boyle. Councillor O'Grady. Councillor Queenan. Councillor Taylor. And Councillor Walsh, I don't think is, okay, bear with me 1 second. There was 5 for the motion, 9 against and 1 abstention.
Okay, most of feet. Okay, number 2, Councillor Healy.
I just want to say that it's very disappointing that councillors that are elected by the people, that the councillors wouldn't give the people their say either here today.
All right, okay. Number 2, you're up again.
Yeah, this is in relation.
Gino.
I'm looking for the council to write to the Minister of Local Government in relation to Japanese knotweed and giant hawkweed. There's a picture there of a worker walks along with me, and you can see the hand after the juice of the hogweed came out on top of it. Now that's at the latest stage. What happens before that, it all bubbles up. It's the sap off the hogweed bubbles up and it spreads on along the hand, and that's when that's 3 days afterwards, as you see the damage that it does. In a lot of areas that we work in Collooney, Ballysadare and surrounding areas, the hogweed is out of control. Unfortunately, I know that I got the reply I got back from the council. It says that Japanese knotweed, that they provide a small budget of their own resources for treatment of Japanese knotweed, but there is nothing here for hogweed. Now, Japanese knotweed is another one that takes serious control, and as well as that, there should be some sort of a scheme or fund set up. And I did change my motion. So I did change the motion to kind of address that issue, because what they want to do is need to set up some sort of a scheme here, especially around the Japanese knotweed. As you're aware yourself, if the ground is moved at all or disturbed, it means the Japanese knotweed can spread easy. It can be picked up in your shoes, picked up in lorries and everything else. And the biggest concern here is that around farms, around community centres and like that, where Japanese knotweed is there, that we want to make sure that there is a scheme there, that people are known exactly what. But I'd like for the council as well to make people aware of the hogweed and the effects that has on areas and has on children and people else. And we seriously need some sort of a fund set up on that. What I'm hearing is the hogweed was brought into this country by landlords years ago to put along by streams to stop people from fishing in them, so that with the hogweed and that. So as I says, I'm hoping that we'll get a good response back from the government in relation to this, and that we need to address it. I want to thank the Environment Section of Sligo County Council for the work that they do and the small fund that they do get in relation to Japanese knotweed. But as I says, I'm hoping now that we can also include the hogweed in it, because to get any area done, it's up on €300 to €400 to get an area done. We're in the process working with a residents group in Collooney now to get it done at the moment. And there, as I says, it has serious effects. Thank you.
My apologies, Councillor Healy. I have your resolution here. Do you want me to read the resolution? Okay. To call on Sligo County Council to write to the Minister for Local Government to make a funding scheme available to control the growth of giant hogweed and Japanese knotweed in Sligo. And that's proposed by you, Councillor Healy. Can I get a second?
I'll second that one.
Councillor O'Boyle. And agreed? Agreed. Okay, we'll move on to Councillor Clark. Okay, Councillor Clark isn't there. If he comes back, we might come back to it with your agreement. Councillor Bree, number 43 on the old.
Yeah, Caherlock, water is a human right, essential for life and for all human needs. As such, water provision and sanitation shouldn't be subject to the profit motive or the free market, and should be made available to us all on the basis of need and not means. In 2016, supported by the Right to Water campaign, Joan Collins TD first launched her bill calling for a referendum to put the public ownership of water into the Irish Constitution. At the time, she pointed out that the bill, which was drafted in conjunction with the Right to Water campaign, did not belong to her or to any politician or party. She said it belonged to the people and communities across the country, as does the water it protects. The Water and Public Ownership Bill 2016 read, "The government shall be collectively responsible for the protection, management and maintenance of the public water system. The government shall ensure in the public interest that this resource remains in public ownership and management." The bill passed second stage in the Dáil without any opposition. The government then indicated that it was agreeable to introduce a different wording but having the same intent. It commenced consultation with the Attorney-General in regard to holding a referendum on public ownership of our water. However, the bill fell with the dissolution of the Dáil. The bill called for public ownership and management of public water services, and the aim is to stop any future government privatising the service or giving the operation of water services to a private company. Caherlock, it's long been the opinion of those of us involved in the Right to Water campaign that the attempted introduction of water charges was about paving the way to privatisation, as was the case for the bin charges. The history of privatisation of water in other countries has meant many people and many families have been subjected to water poverty. They've had their water cut off because they couldn't afford to pay for it. It has happened and continues to happen in the United States, in Italy and numerous other countries where water services have been privatised. A constitutional guarantee of public ownership in Ireland will protect water not only from future attempts to sell it off, but from the pressure of European and international institutions which have a track record of supporting privatisation. So therefore, I'm proposing that Sligo County Council confirms its support for the proposal to hold a referendum to amend Article 28 of the Constitution, so as to ensure that the government shall be collectively responsible for the protection, management and maintenance of the public water system, and to ensure, in the public interest, that this resource remains in public ownership and management. And further, the Council requests the government to hold the referendum at the soonest possible time in 2022. I formally move the motion, Caroline.
Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. And in supporting the motion, you can see the devastating impacts of the privatisation of water around the world, especially in England, in America, Italy. I think it's time that we need to hold a referendum now rather than putting it on a long finger. I think it's gone back since 2016, 2017, 2018. There's always something putting it off. So hopefully this council will support the motion and we'll push for a referendum. Thank you.
Is that agreed? Agreed.
Yeah. Thanks, Jerry. Bye. Bye.
Councillor Mullany, put yourself on mute there, Kevin. No, sorry, Councillor Gibbon.
In light of the number of people that are still out of work, for example, those working in the hospitality sector and in the pubs and music industry, and others that are still depending on the COVID payment because they are not back at work yet and probably won't be for a long time, all these people and their families need our protection. Figures from the Rental Tenancy Board shows that since August 2020 to June of this year, 1,112 eviction orders have been issued in the 26 counties. These figures show how the government is continually failing those renting. Since August of 2020, just over 1,000 notices to quit have been issued, with a significant increase in the number since March of this year. There has been 3,800 rent arrears notices being issued in the same time frame. 475 renters availing of the Fianna Fáil Minister for Housing, Mr. Dara O'Brien's extremely limited COVID-19 written declaration protection. That is just 12.5% of those struggling with rent arrears. There are very weak measures put in place by the Minister. This just goes to show that this government is failing to protect renters and their limited protection isn't working. This coalition government needs to be serious on this extremely urgent issue and bring about the reintroduction of the original ban on the rent increase, notice to quit and evictions until the end of this year. I'd ask you all to support this motion. Thanks very much.
Senator Healy, did you second that? Great. Seconder? Councillor Boyd.
Problems arose on the Mall. Now, it was an issue there that people that was coming in and out the Mall had to deal with was the likes of when the kids were going to the grammar school and being dropped off for school, and that was just a situation that was happening in the morning. This has got escalated since Sligo University Hospital. Since Sligo General Hospital has started using the front of the hospital as the main entrance, there is backlogs of traffic on the Mall because the car park cannot take what's at the front, cannot take the volume of traffic that's going through. And I'm asking for a study, an impact study, just be carried out to see is there any way we can improve this for people that's using that. It's not too bad. It's bad enough at the moment, but it's going to escalate as soon as the kids are back in school, in the grammar school in September. And I'd ask maybe that we could get maybe something looked at before September. I'd ask you all to support the motion. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Cahirlock, and thanks to Ms Clark for the response. And I'd like to thank the Director for acknowledging that we have a housing crisis in Sligo.
in agreement on several points. One, there is a lack of sufficient new residential development in Sligo. Two, this will undermine our ambition to grow Sligo as a regional growth centre. Three, we will have additional population of 10,000 people in Sligo by 2031. There's 68 hectares zoned since 2010, which remains undeveloped. I'd have to ask, is that in the wrong place? I can only find 45, by the way. There's insufficient service sites coming to the market. And yes, these other things have nothing to do with us, but the banks are slow to lend for site acquisition or development. The cost of building makes margins tight. Again, that's not really our issue. And we do not have the, so those are the main issues. But we disagree on a few points as well. You're saying that sufficient land is zoned for residential development to meet the housing demand for the life of the next development plan. I just can't accept that, because there isn't. There quite simply is not enough land there, and nobody is building houses in Sligo to the levels that we need. We're falling way behind with our targets. There's a limited number of house builders working in this area, and really the only ones that are interested in building in Sligo are the local builders. The other big boys from outside have given up on Sligo, and maybe that's a good thing. We can deal with this as part of the current review of the upcoming review of the county development plan, but in my opinion that will be too late. If we wait for the next county development plan, it will be 2025. I know it'll be brought in 2023, but then if they start submitting planning applications, looking for funding, trying to get all the services in place, stuff like that, it'll be 2025 before we see any possible substantial growth in housing stock in Sligo. No action and a severe deepening of the housing problem, which is both misunderstood and underestimated, mainly by our state planners, not locally. It's at national level. But what we need is urgently needed here. The passing of this motion alone will not be near enough to solve the increasing housing shortage issue in our town and county. An example of this would be Farmhill Manor, where a waiting list well in excess of 100 households, and it's at the higher to the middle income market due to the very high specification and standard and the location. It's in high demand. If the houses were developed to a lower spec with a lower price point on them, the demand would be twice, if not 3 times, what's been experienced. Sligo is entirely starved of new housing construction at the moment. If you, the members, do not rezone more land, you in effect make it easier for builders and developers to make bigger profits. You hand a monopoly to large-scale developers who will come in the future. We're not arguing the point that there is not enough land zoned, but the problem is where it is zoned, and some of it is not serviced and will not be built on within the life of this plan. This has been proven in the fact that it has been zoned since before the property crash in 2008 and has never been developed to date, as acknowledged in the Director's report. How much of the land in the reserve is service land is probably a question that I would like to know as well. How much of the land in the reserve is not serviced? Is it not national policy to develop the service land first, even though since 2017 that is sitting in the reserve? So at the end of the day, we need to take service land out of the reserve in exchange for unserviced lands, if necessary, that is zoned at present. It's as simple as that. The problem is this exercise was supposed to be done in 2017, and then I think the councillors at the time, and they can speak for themselves here, were told that there'd be a review in 2 years to look at it, and that didn't take place. This is the only amendment of this type that has come in the 4 years since that plan was put in. And I've been constantly listening to councillors here talking about how they were promised a chance to review it. In my opinion, if the amendment is not made, we will be beating the same drum 10 years from now. Even with the announcement that the ending of the strategic housing development thing and it's handed over everything to the local authority. So it's back completely in our ball court now. This note written before that was actually announced. So it's up to us to provide this land. Councillors, I beg you to support this motion, as not supporting it will lead to further housing shortages in our town and county and further price increases across Sligo. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to look after 2 years. We didn't get that opportunity. That's one place. The only technical thing I'll say to you, Councillor Gilroy, are you going to present maps? How are you going to move this on now? Is it going to be, like, a motion here is fine, but it's only a motion. We need to identify the areas you're talking about and start the process. I know they'll all say wait for the county development plan, but I agree with you. That's 4 years before it's fair too long. So and the same is happening in rural Ireland, very same with buffer zone and all of that. And I think we can't wait for 2 or 2.5 years before we can move on housing in our county. So I support you.
Councillor Grady.
Be brief, Cahir. Look, I fully, wholeheartedly support the motion, and I think it's timely. And we all know the huge issue that there is for people who are looking to have their own house. And I think it's important that we look at the house with the lower spec, as Councillor Gilroy has outlined, to allow people to start and get on the housing ladder. If you look at what's available to rent in Sligo, there's nothing really much available for people, and it's certainly having an effect on people moving to Sligo, which we all see now, a move from the east coast to the west, one of the spin-offs for our area because of the pandemic, but we haven't the housing supply to meet the demand at all levels. So I think it's a timely motion, and as Councillor Queenan has said, how do we move this on is the key, and I think that's the important part of it.
Councillor Fox.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Fully supportive of this motion. It's a timely motion. I worked within the sector myself for many years, and look at the right to own your own home is, it's a basic human right. People should be supported. Young couples should be supported. This is a very important motion. More needs to be done to supply housing in the Sligo area. It's just we're falling behind. Planning needs to be eased in order to address the lack of supply. And I think we need to sit down as a council and put a plan in place to provide more housing for the public. And people should have the right to do so. So I'm supportive of this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Foss. Councillor Casterly.
Thank you. I'd just like to support the motion as well, please. As everybody knows, we're in a housing crisis. We need houses to rent and to buy. And unless land is opened up to let people build and small developers build, we're going to continue with this problem, and it's going to get worse. I'm getting calls weekly at this stage asking, do I know of any property to rent or to buy in all of Sligo, not just in North Sligo. There's a huge demand in North Sligo, but it's in the entire county. People are moving back. They're trying to make plans to move back from England, from Australia, from Dublin, from America, to set up, to buy or to build or to rent even for a while with their families, or they're planning to have young families. This is what we're looking for years and years. People now want to come back. For generations, people were leaving. Now they want to come back, and we need to have houses for them. So I would like to support the motion 100%. Thank you.
Councillor Mulvey.
Thanks, Cahir. Look, yeah, and just I'd also like to support the motion and echo some of the words that have been said. We're all been getting contacted by people, and I certainly see it out here in this region, that houses are not there to rent or to buy. And people are continuously contacting me and saying, do I know of any house that's available to buy or to rent? People are putting notes in vacant houses, asking people, will they rent it? And I know of people, particularly in South Sligo, who could not get houses to rent, had to move to Roscommon. So it's certainly an issue that needs to be addressed. And at present, with the lack of housing, it's only going to get worse unless something is done.
Thanks, Councillor Mulvey. And just as the seconder of the motion, just to support the motion as well, I think everybody has covered it fairly well. But I think it's very, very important right now. I think it's really is a timely motion. We are struggling, as Councillor Mulvey has alluded to, and Councillor Casserly. We're all getting phone calls wondering, are there houses to rent? Is there anything out there? Even, I suppose, to look at buying at the moment, there's a serious shortage. So I'd just like to support the motion, and I think if we can, that we should try and take a common sense approach to this type of thing, if we can at all. Is that motion agreed?
Here, look, can I just comment, and I'd be sympathetic to the motion also. Here, look, the response, the report we received from Director of Service Authority Clark points out that there are presently over 68 hectares of land zoned for residential or mixed that include residential within the Sligo and Barnes area. And these lands were originally zoned for this purpose back in 2010. But I think it's very clear to all of us that people appear to be just sitting on the land. It's not been utilised. And in that context, I can certainly understand the logic in opening the strategic reserve, But if we're going down that route, I would also suggest that we should look at the land that is zoned and consider dezoning some of it, because it's unfair on everyone that owners can just sit on it and expect the price to go up. I think that they either lose it, or use it or lose it, I think is the terminology. I think that should be looked at.
Mr. Moylan is looking to come in. Do you want to come in first?
Who is?
Frank.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Frank, Mr. Moylan will let you in.
Thanks, Ciarán. I'll be brief. I don't want to repeat what's already in the response from the director, but I think we all are in agreement that there has been a significant lack of supply of housing for several years. What I don't agree with, though, is that the solution to that is to zone more land. We have, as set out in the response, over 68 hectares of land zoned for residential purposes or a mix of residential purposes within the Sligo and Barnes area. So the problem clearly is that a lot of people, a lot of landowners are sitting on that land and unwilling to develop it. And I don't accept that just simply adding more land to that is going to actually generate additional supply. What we have committed to, though, in the context of the review of the county development plan, is to look at those lands that are currently zoned and to see if we have the right land zoned in the right places. And the only way to do that in a kind of holistic fashion is to look at all of the land as part of the review of the county development plan. Now, I accept that is going to take time, but it's going to take, 1 year to get to draft stage, where we start showing what lands we consider should be changed in terms of the zoning, and what land should be taken out of strategic reserve and put into phase 1. And that will be occurring within the next year, so next 9 months. Finally, I just want to point out there is an issue as well with the wording of the motion, in that to vary a county development plan, you have to go through a public consultation process first. And you must take on board the comments made through that public consultation process before you determine whether or not to vary the plan. The wording of the motion predetermines that public consultation process by saying that you shall vary the plan. So it's kind of saying we're going to vary the plan regardless of what submissions we received. So I'd advise the elected members that the motion as currently worded is probably ultra varies. And really, you should be looking at the section of the Act, which is section 13(1)A, which sets out the procedure in respect of the elected members proposing a variation to a plan. Thank you, Ciarán.
Thanks, Frank. Councillor Gilroy.
Yes, thanks, Frank, very much for that response. I think based on that, I would possibly amend my motion to say that Sligo County Council begins the process to vary the current county development plan. And in doing that we can just start the ball rolling on this variation. I'm not sure if that will do it, if there is anything else required. If you bring it back to me, I'll certainly bring it in the September meeting as one of my motions to amend it slightly. I have no problem with that. The process, as Councillor Queenan asked, how will it be done? We'd have to take your guidance. You're the experts on this as to how this will be done. But it is the will of the councillors, as you have heard, and not to wait the 2 years. The 2 years is too long because it doesn't get started till then. And I do appreciate it will put extra work, and anything we can do to simplify that, we will certainly do. I know that Ms. Clark said at our last meeting about how it could be confusing for members of the public. Well, I think the people of Sligo are very intelligent people, and that they will be well able to understand what they're actually looking at a particular time. And it's unfortunate this didn't happen before, but it had to wait for the new National Development Plan, it had to wait for the RSES, it had to wait for all these things. Sligo and Environs Plan, if I'm not wrong, the current one was due to be replaced, was it 3 or 4 years ago? And so it's so far behind. And although that's not the area that I represent, the problems in Sligo town are drifting out into the country. People who can't find houses in Sligo town but want to live there are now buying house, snapping up everything that comes available out in the rural areas, and the local people cannot get to buy there. So it's a problem from Enniscrone to Castlegal and down to Gorching. It's everywhere. So I think the members want to start the process. If there's something technically wrong with our wording, if you come back to me, I'll amend it. If there's anything else that we as the councillors can do, I'm sure we'll all put our shoulder to the wheel and help to do this. It's really only, I've tried to keep it to lands that are in the reserve and adjacent to. And if as part of that, the Directorate feels that there's a need to include lands that have to be dezoned in order to stay with national policy, I'll be quite happy to accept that. I have no problem. I'm not just looking for more land. I want the land that's owned being built on, because we're in a housing crisis and young people are suffering. Thank you.
I'll let Ms. Culfeather just wants to come in just for...
Well, here, look, one of the issues I wanted to raise, Councillor DeRoy has covered it, and that is resources to carry out a variation and carry out a review of the county development plan at the same time. But if the members agree, well, then that's a problem we have to solve. The second thing is, and we'll do it in advance of September, we're just going to get legal advice on this matter. I personally, as a layperson, have a concern that if we're in the process of carrying out a review of the county development plan, and we're also carrying out a variation to the existing plan, we just want to be 100% sure that we're not causing us problems in relation to the overall review. But that's something we can clarify in advance of September.
Could I ask to have that as early as it's received? Because, you know, I've been advised that it shouldn't be a problem, but it may be, and solicitors differ, and that's fine. So,
Frank, I think you had your hand up. Are you okay? You don't want to come back in?
Well, I just wanted to come back in, but I think Tom has covered that. There is an issue with regard to committing to vary a plan that you have already indicated you're going to replace. So the commencement of the replacement of the current plan starts at the end of this month. So there seems to be a lack of logic about also committing to vary a plan that you're already saying you're going to replace. The other thing is that there is a certain degree of lack of clarity about what lands we're talking about as well. And that to zone additional lands, there would have to be an exchange to make sure that we're not exceeding the amount of lands that we're zoning for residential purposes to meet our future needs. So the variation doesn't, or the wording of the motion doesn't allow to show people, well, what lands are going to be dezoned to accommodate the lands that you're referring to as been taken out of strategic reserve. And if you are putting something on public display, you'd have to be upfront about that.
Okay, Councillor Healy, I'm going to let you in, and then Councillor Gilroy has an amendment that...
Just a question to the CEO. It's in relation to the land that we have, our own land, for building on. Now, I'm aware that there's a lot of building going on, but I'm aware there's land in Clooney and Ballysadare and Ballantor. When will we see houses being built on that? Affordable housing, council housing, that's in our own, that we have ourselves, that we should be pushing out as well.
We'll have to come back to you on that, Councillor. That's dependent on the housing programme and the funding that's allocated and various schemes that are in progress. You know, we'll obviously be giving an update on that at the budget meeting in November or whenever, so that'll be part of our plans going forward. We'll be able to give an update at that stage.
Does mean that's in our own hands, that we can look for that work to be done? We can't depend on developers or anything else, but that's something that we can be looking at ourselves, because I know all councillors here are hearing it from people out there that's in rent accommodation. They're paying rent that'll go down to a mortgage now at the present, but at the same time we want affordable houses built for them people that can get into a house as well. And Councillor Boyle's father always said, and it was a true word, when you have your house, just mean that to have your own place is a very important thing. So I mean, we work here that we can do as the local authority on land that we're sitting on as well, that we should be building on.
Okay, it's depending on the department. If we don't get funding, we can't build. It's all down to funding.
All right, thanks. The amendment reads that Sligo County Council shall begin the process to vary the current county development plan. And it continues the same, to permit the development of specifically residentially zoned land, which is currently designated as being within the Strategic Land Reserve, where such lands are adjacent to existing residential developments and are serviced with adequate capacity. This variation is made in order to meet the current urgent demand for housing. Can that be agreed?
I thought Frank said that the notice of motion needed to be amended.
It is amended. It's amended to read. It did read that Sligo County Council shall vary the current county development plan. It now reads that Sligo County Council shall begin the process to vary the current county development plan. Is it not?
You all right with that, Frank?
Well, I'm not, because the last sentence still says that the variation is made in order to, so it's, again, still predetermining the outcome of the public consultation process.
Perhaps Councillor Gilroy can meet with Frank after the meeting or before our next meeting, and that I'm sure the planners will assist in producing a motion to reflect our views.
If the problem's just with the last line, I'll also remove it.
There is supposed to be a special meeting to discuss the county development plan. I would suggest that perhaps that's the right context to discuss this variation as well.
And would you be happy if we done that and you put in a motion prior to the next meeting and rework?
Okay, but listen, it isn't going to go away, and really, I think it has to be. It's 2 months. It's September before we get back.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Donald, are you happy with that?
Okay, we'll have to live with it if that's what the members want.
Just to clear it for Councillor Gilroy. So special meeting has happened. Councillor Gilroy then can put that motion forward to the special meeting. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
I don't know if that meeting will obviously have particular standing.
It'll obviously have to come in here in September.
Yeah. It's back to September.
I was thinking.
It's back to September, and I think, with due regard, we can amend the wording slightly if required. I don't have a problem with that, but let's start looking for the resources to do the job. That's the first thing that has to be done, because I know you can't do it with your current resources, and I know Councillor Clark had a motion to get you extra resources, but it's something that the process is going to start, and whether we have to twist the wording left and right and in and out, but it is going to start, and unless I'm told that it's absolutely legally banned from bringing it, and I will have to get a second opinion on that if I do get that legal word. I think we have to. It's the only powers we have here to do anything about this. We can do nothing about the banks and lending. We can do nothing about all these other issues. Sligo's in a housing crisis. There's going to be more and more families. It's making things worse. Maybe some people want to see the houses, want to pay more property tax and see the value of their houses going up. That's not what I want. What I want is that there's more housing provided, because it's urgently needed. We're losing tradesmen out of Sligo who are heading to England, heading to Poland, heading everywhere else to work because there's nothing being built in Sligo. We need to get it moving, and it's after the 2023 amendment, it'll take another 2 years before we see blocks on the ground. Thank you.
Can I make a proposal? Councillor Gilroy, there's 7 motions in front of us. Can I make a proposal that you go out and you talk to Frank and you word it now, and then bring it back in here before the end of the meeting, and we'll get it done and dusted? Can I propose that? Can I get it?
Is that agreed? Agreed.
I'll phone you in a few minutes, Frank.
Councillor Gilroy, do you want to take 9 now?
Right, no, look at it, it's simple. Listen, the reason I'm putting in the N15 down, there's going to be more fatalities on that road. It has been suspended. I do appreciate that it's back in the luck again. It's part of the Atlantic corridor, and that's very, very important. It's come up at regional level as well, that we need to, that this road needs to be part of the regional infrastructure. Forgetting this road is crazy. I was down there this morning at Castlegal with Declan Noon and Damien Henry having a meeting, and you're taking your life in your hands to have a meeting on the side of that road. It has to be done. The new road is needed urgently.
Is that agreed? Counts are 10. Councillor Connolly.
Yes, Cahir, look, I think Councillor Healy might have an amendment to this.
There's a resolution or amendment to that. Can I read it out?
Yep.
To ask Sligo County Council to engage with Bus Éireann, Local Link and private transport operators to increase the number of available services from Tubbercurry, Ballymote, Collooney, Ballysadare and West Sligo, especially at off-peak times, early mornings and early evenings, to facilitate at these hours. And that's proposed by Councillor Healy and seconded by Councillor O'Connolly. Councillor O'Connolly, seeing as you the motion, do you want to speak?
The other way around. Yeah, I put down this motion as I had a lot of contact from people, mainly working in Sligo, with a view to increasing bus services and connectivity between the routes in Tubbercurry, West Sligo, Ballysadare, Collooney and any other town in our catchment area. Workplaces today, they don't work from 8 to 4, 9 to 5. Start and finish work at various times in today's economy. And if we're serious cars on the road and our carbon footprint, I think we need to look at our bus services seriously and get a coordinated timetable between all services and all servers. The options they require. Thanks, Cahir.
Really?
First of all, I want to thank Councillor Connolly for letting me amend the motion to include Collooney and Ballysadare, because the reason between West Sligo you have to travel through Ballysadare, coming from the Ballymote, Tubbercurry area, it makes more sense to pick up a third village, which might also help us when we're looking for the fund and we're looking for the areas to be taken in. It's a major problem. Which means, as I says, if we have our villages out there, it's important that we have a bus service that accommodates them, and the bus service has to be running at the time that suits the people bringing them to work. That's the most important thing. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Mulvey.
Yeah, thanks, Cahir. And look, I'd support the motion as well. And I know along with yourself, recently we had another meeting with the NTA, and this is an issue that has been highlighted. And while I welcome the NTA are making some progress on routes around Sligo town, and I know some of the town-based councillors have been highlighting that. Certainly the two previous meetings we've had with the NTA, we have said that to them, that, and you will know yourself, the success of the 977 route from Balladreen through to Gurchin, Ballymote, into Collooney and Sligo. That's very successful. But I also highlighted, and I know you were fully supportive of this, the Tubbercurry, Clonacule, Coolani, Collooney, Ballysadare side. You know, at the moment there's only one bus going in from Killarney at 10 to 7 every morning, and that's not suitable for people that are working at 9 a.m. that they have to wait around Sligo for maybe over an hour. So certainly I'd support Councillor Connolly on this motion. It's timely because at the end of the day, if people having a service, you know, and we've stressed this CNTA, the east coast of the country and the big cities have bus routes and bus times maybe 2 and 3 times an hour. We're looking for something out in the rural parts of South Sligo and West Sligo that will service people, give them a bus going in the morning and a bus coming home at times to meet workers, students and elderly people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mulvey. And could just show my support for the motion as well. And as Councillor Mulvey said, we did discuss it with the NTA on behalf of of our municipal district as well. And we highlighted the importance of it, and we will be having further meetings with them. So we'll discuss it at further meetings as well. That motion is agreed. Gibbons, 11.
Go here, look, it's, no, the reality to it, just like the roads department, is to go up, take a look at it first, the alleyway between Willow Park and Hazel Grove. It's the moss alone on parts about that depth. There's no tarmac left on it, and it's just to go up and we come back with a report in relation to it. And send us out a report once they have it completed, and then we'll look at what works that's maybe done. We might have to just look at maybe trying to fund that maybe ourselves somewhere along the line, getting our own allocations come the new year or whatever. But all I'm looking for is a report really back on this, see what it costs next year.
Thanks, Councillor Gibbons. Councillor O'Boyle, do you want to come in a second?
Thank you, Chair. Just to support the motion, it is in need of works done on it, so maybe the council could get it cleaned or something to get the moss and maybe something put down on it.
Okay.
I'd support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Grady.
Yeah, I fully support the motion, and certainly, as Councillor Gibbons has said, if there's funding needed, those of us that represent the area will be very happy to allocate funding towards the upgrading of the lane. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Agreed. 12, Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. It has been brought to my attention that many workers are not aware that they're being ripped off by SafePass contractors, some who charge up to €265 for a SafePass renewal. Workers are not required to reset their SafePass and the cost to go with that, but should legally only pay €32 for administration of a renewed SafePass identity card, the same way you don't have to reset your driving test when you're renewing your licence. This was a finding by a judge taken in the High Courts against Solace Training Agency, and the instruction of the Minister of State who has directed workers back to work whose SafePass had expired during COVID. Yet the SafePass contractors are flouting these findings and gouging up hard-pressed workers. I fully support the Renew for 32 campaign and encourage workers, subcontractors and employers to resist this rip-off and familiarise themselves with Builders Workers Know Your Rights organisation who are leading out against this abuse of power. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I got the report, and I know the council has no role in the area, but we do have a desperate need for compliance officers or finance for compliance officers. We need some sort of database to be linked in with the RTB through the councils to make sure people, especially in rent pressure zones, that it aren't being ripped off. We have sky high rents. We're just talking about housing, and in the next year or two, the housing, I don't think the council will be able to withstand what's coming, the amount of people that's going to be looking for social housing. But if landlords have to register or are being forced to register with the RTB, for every new tenant, this could be part of an online database for everybody. So that way, if you're considering moving into a property, you could check your rent, what it was before and after, so that nobody is getting ripped off. And we can stop landlords making their own rules. So I propose the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Is that agreed?
Chair, sorry, Cathaoirleach.
Oh, apologies. Mr. Moore.
Yeah, no, sorry. Just to say, the motion as it stands, I think that the point of the report that circulated is the council doesn't have any statutory authority in relation to this, so it wouldn't be in order for us to go looking for funding to employ a compliance officer in this area.
Councillor Fox, I just got Councillor Fox in. I'm sorry, Councillor Fox, have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to come in briefly on that. Look, the Residential Tenancy Board, or the RTB, was set up in 2004, and it provides information to both landlord and tenants in their rights and responsibilities. Have to, and so people can make informed decisions to comply with rent.
For at the end.
So there's no need for a compliance officer to enforce landlords to comply with rent pressure zones and rent increases. There's no need for that. That's to me, it's the misuse and abuse of taxpayer hard-earned money, and there's no need for it.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll let Councillor Grady in first. Sorry, go on, Councillor Boyle.
Understandably, John, I got when I went through the response, but it's just the case. I don't know, Tom, if you're dealing with any of the housing agencies, the approved housing bodies, they are asking that we have a compliance officer. I don't know how many cases you deal with, but I know the cases I deal with. People are getting ripped off for rents, and the standard of the housing is absolutely disgraceful. And I don't know if you're going to see the same situations we're looking at. But anybody that is dealing in housing situations sees how bad and how poor the system is, that it is only set up for landlords. And that's it. There's nobody making any money out of this except the landlords. People can't afford their rents. This time next year, if the housing application form was easier to get on, we'd have thousands more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ready?
No, I would understand that the council would have no statutory, and that the residence tenancy board would be the people who would have charge of making sure that tenants weren't exploited. And most of Sligo is in a rent pressure zone, and if properties are registered, people cannot put their properties up more than 4%. So that is, and rightly so, that's a protection for people who are. It's different if a property hasn't been let previously, but properties that have been let, that the tenants have been registered, because of the pressure rent zone in this area, and most of it, that the most it can go up by 4%. And yes, Councillor Boyle, it's awful important that people are properly looked after, both sides of the coin, that the person renting the property is looked after and the person that's letting the property is looked after as well. So certainly it was worthwhile to bring it up, but my understanding is that the tenancy board are the people who have responsibility for the implementation of the issues raised by it. Thank you.
Can Mr. Moore, are you saying that without responsibility we can't move the motion, or can we move the motion? Or do you want to?
Well, no. All I'm saying is that we wouldn't have any authority to employ an officer along the lines that's outlined in the motion. We don't have any statutory authority. There's no statutory provision for it.
Do you want to amend it to include?
No, just I'll redo it for September. All right.
Councillor Queenan, 14.
Second.
Oh, I forgot the mic. I want to read out the reply. The Sligo County Council have received tenders for a joint coastal erosion and flood risk management study at Strandhill and Eastleigh. By this very nature, these studies are time-consuming, with the report for this particular study due in summer 2021. Now, I'm going to talk to you, Tom, on this because you're a practical guy. I know who wrote this motion, and the coastal protection issue right along our coast is serious. I acknowledge it's very expensive to do anything with, but there are lands being lost, there are rivers flooding, and there are harbours being lost, and it has never been high up on the agenda of the last county manager here anyway, and I know we only get 75% funding, so it's costly on the council to do anything, and it's like putting a finger in a haystack or a needle in a haystack to get it all sorted. But this latest one now, I will get management to go away and do a study and bring consultants in here and give us a big sexy report. And it cost the council and the taxpayer a load of money to do that report. And 2 or 3 years' time, if I'm still here, there won't be one penny extra in West Sligo for coastal protection. And that's the honest truth. I'm not here to criticise anybody. Now, I would say abandon that idea. Please, Tom, because what you've done in the past is you identified the bad area, all the areas, you had a list of things that was going to Dublin. We get funded for some small funding and we work on that. This is only kicking the can a mile down the road. The second part of it then says, a recent study was carried out on the Finnet River regarding the eroded sea defence at the mouth of this river. However, recent review and analysis indicate any capital scheme here would be of significant cost and would not meet cost-benefit criteria for potential funding for the Office of Public Works. Now, that's more la-la stuff. Because what's happened here on the Finnet River, for people to know, is the mouth of the river is blocked. And as soon as there comes a flood down the Finnet River, it comes up the road, it blocks the road, it damages the road, it goes out on the main in 59, or R297. And it wouldn't take anything like the money that this individual is saying to do it. I would say 50 or 60,000 will go a long way in doing a lot of this work. I know. But Tom, I want you to look at that report again. I say I'm very disappointed. And by the way, Eastleigh Sure, Eastkey is not the biggest problem. Eastkey is a problem at the road. But Pulliheny is crisis. Innisfrone is crisis. And it's not even included in the report. Now, Tom, I know you didn't write this motion. I don't want to be you're the manager. But would you go back, Tom, to whoever wrote this report? I'm sorry, Tom. I'm sorry for getting sorry personally.
Councillor Mulvey, do you want to comment as the seconder before Tom answers that?
Look, Anoka here, look, just to concur with what the motion, because I also had some people that are very worried over near Pulliheny and over that side. And I know Councillor Clark as well had raised issues at numerous meetings about coastal erosion over there. So look, just if some more can be done, but we'll wait for a further reply. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Right.
I suppose, Cahirlock, it's a couple of things. First of all, we've 190 kilometres of coastline in Sligo. It's all under threat, more so in the last 5-7 years than Joe, from being out there, and it would have been for decades. It's just the way things are. The problem is to carry out the right works now, it's becoming a bigger job and more expensive. And the SEXI report is a pre-requirement to be eligible for that 75% funding. You know, if you don't have it, don't be applying for funding for any works. So that, on the one hand, if we want to get big money to carry out what we believe are permanent works, we have to have that report. Yes, you're right. In the past, we've done small bits ourselves out of small money that we've available from our own resources to do little jobs in different places, and we'll look and see if we can do that again. But the problem is getting bigger, and the small money isn't going to do it anymore. And I suppose that's the difficulty we have. And as I say, if you're going looking for 75% funding, if you haven't got a report in your hand, don't come.
Mr. Calfeather, Innisfrone or Pulliheny is not included in the study. So they should be also included in the study. If we're going to do the study, you have to do it. Include Innisfrone, please, Pulliheny, the Rathlee area, Eastkey, and Finnet. That's, and I'm not going any further down. If Councillor Clark was here, he made a board to add to it. But what is he? This is the report I got.
I think here, look, I'll go back and check it out, Joe. My understanding is we're gone down the road in terms of that study now. I don't know why it's confined to that particular area. I think it might have been originally for Strand Hill, and we were able to get a bit more put into it because we're getting some funding towards that as well to the study itself. I'm not sure. I think we're down the road that we're going to have to carry out the study anyway. But I take your point in relation to a study is required for the other areas as well, and I see if that can be progressed.
Can we agree the motion, Councillor Queenan, and we discuss who you need added into it, that you discuss that with Mr. Culfeather?
But I think the whole thing is there's been no funding for coastal protection works in West Sligo in 2021.
Chair, before it passes, we need Councillor Kennedy.
We'll have.
I'm going to have to take you up on one point. The previous chief executive, he was a champion now of coastal protection, and he always said that it's a national problem to solve, and Sligo County Council wasn't going to solve it on his own. So I think you're being a wee bit unfair to him.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's a safe talk.
$15 votes of sympathy. Oh, yeah. We can keep going. Opposed, yes. Seconded.
Chairman of the Innisfrone Tire Towns for many, many years, and a champion of fundraising in that area, and I want to pay tribute to his family, to him and his family.
Votes of congratulations. Opposed? Okay. Councillors in training. Second. 18, to note the summary of proceedings of councillors 10 noted. Correspondence. Matters arising from the minutes? Okay. Councillor Fox, sorry.
Yeah, just briefly, Chair. Under any other business, is there any hope that we can get something done with the road verges, the growth on the road verges at busy junctions? There's a lot of dangerous junctions at the moment out in rural areas. Is there any hope that we can get the hedge cutters out to address the issues?
I think
in the interest of public safety.
They're at them at the moment.
I know that, yeah, but there's a lot of them needs to be more.
Okay.
More of them needs to be done.
Okay.
Councillor, can I come in before you finish?
Take off that apron, Councillor Baker.
Now, Councillor Baker.
You're killing.
Yeah, Councillor Baker.
Were you killing what? Were you killing this morning?
I just want to bring in there a reporter with the radio, Harry Keeney, brought out a wonderful book. You probably heard about her Carrie childhood. So I'd just like to congratulate him on it, because it's something in all areas that it'll be lost through time if stuff is recorded. But it's an excellent book, and I say any of you should have a read on it, because Harry is an excellent man when he was with the champion and with the radio now. So just like to promote it for him and congratulate him. Thank you.
Councillor Grady.
All right, if we go back.
I'd like to second that. My own husband is a neighbour out in that area, and he has absolutely said it's a fabulous book, and again written by Harry, who we've all benefited from his expertise over the years, and certainly his respect that he treats people with, and that came across very strongly in his book. So well done to Harry. Certainly the people of that area that I've been speaking to are delighted with this piece of history that has been recalled, and very important piece.
Thank you, Councillor Healy.
Yeah, I just want to agree with what they said about Harry's book. It's very good. Just on another note, at our last meeting, we were meant to write to the Minister of Justice regarding the Garda station. Have we any report on it? And also, we were meant to put together a delegation to come together to meet to discuss it. There is a delegation there set up already, and I'd like for them to come to visit the station and also to put a programme in place before we meet with the Minister.
Okay.
Can that happen?
Yeah, and I'd also like to be. I'd also like to be associated with the votes of congratulations to Harry Keeney. I'd like to congratulate him on his new book and wish him the best of luck. He's a gentleman, and I wish him good luck with it. I hope to have a good read of it as well. We will go back to Councillor Gilroy's motion and review that.
If I can, just before that, obviously to join in what you're saying about Harry, and secondly that you'll all be invited out to Grange to welcome back our Olympic heroes after that. The community games will be holding an event to welcome them back, as we did in the past, and you'll all be invited to come out to that. So we look forward to this weekend when the county holds its breath. We held our breath in 1990. We'll hold our breath again starting Saturday night and going on for the next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Now, Councillor, we'll come back to your motion.
I've spoken extensively with Frank. He's given me some advice, and I reluctantly, very reluctantly, agree that we discuss it next week and that we bring it to the September meeting. So it's an adjourned motion to the September meeting. It may be altered, the wording may be altered, but it will still exist. And I don't know if Frank is still listening. There will be something there. It might not be exactly as I've said. I'm not looking to benefit any particular individual, even though it started with an individual. But there was quite a few people, and I'm sure you've all, and may I just advise councillors to all register that you have been lobbied on this issue from a legal point of view, to say you've been lobbied.
Thanks, Councillor Gilroy. Can we...
I'd just like to also be associated with the comments there to Harry on his new book. Wish him all the very best. He lives close by, and I know Harry personally, so yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Fox. So now we need to set a date for a meeting with the planning staff. Give me a date.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're okay.
Talk to the planner and see.
Send out a date then. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We'll do that today.
We agreed to have an hour in September. What do you think, councillor? Your motion. We need to know.
My motion will be back to September, but to be fair, I think we may need to get legal advice on things like that and what's told to us. And the planners obviously need to check some things out as well. This could be rejected by the Office of the Planning Regulator, but the buck stops with the Minister. They can recommend rejecting our variation, but they can't stop it. It's the Minister, only the Minister that can stop it, and we will lobby him.
Is it point of next to have a meeting with the planners today? Or should we have a meeting?
No, I think we have a lot of other issues, as you know, rural issues.
Yeah, and we'll, to be honest, we'll have to set a date before the end of the month. If that's the case. If we're not waiting September, we'll set a date. I'll talk to Mr. Moylan and Dorothy and we'll set a date before the end of the month, all right? Okay, well done. Thanks.
Look.
Yes?
Look. Yeah, just one thing before you finish there. After we had the debate about property tax, was put out on the paper and there that we raised the tax, but it's staying what we originally raised it for. A lot of people take the meaning out of it that we put it 50% again. So I just want to make that clarity because it makes great headline. Councillors raised by 50%, but only it's staying as one.
Well done, Councillor Baker. Yeah, we're all seeing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Huh? Which? No,